without further ado, let us begin. If you have any questions, try to send them in at the end so I can see them and answer every one of them. All right, just a little housekeeping on the session. First of all, we'll start with the summary of the competition, the rules, the deadlines, the future steps, as well as other stuff that you can look forward to the competition, and the research process. So we're going to look at the RFP and how we can tackle it, the best ways to do research, the best websites to find research papers and some brief knowledge. And also we're going to find resources and intro on the topic. I'll give you an example of part of the research proposal I worked on another competition. I've received a lot of recurring questions regarding how you wanted a previous sample. Now, this is the first time there's going to be an Egyptian space settlement design competition. So for now, we do not have one, but I will be sharing a structure I have used in a previous competition and an example of how I kind of structured my essay and a passage from that essay as well, so you can kind of get your minds going as towards the research process. So at the end, I'll also give you some of my experience with the ISSDC, as I was the previous participant of the International Space Settlement Design Competition, which is the next stage after the Egyptian Space Settlement Design Competition. So if a team wins from these teams, you'll be able to go ahead and forward to the ISSDC, which will be hosted at NASA this year. And yeah, so without further ado, let us begin. So first up, the EGSDC. I'll try to run through this quickly, as you may already know some of the basics, but I'll just give you a heads up reminder of the EGSDC. Now, ahead of Egypt's 10-year national space plan, there are a couple of phases that the Egyptian space plan will grow, and currently Egypt has tackled various fields and various things, starting from national defense using space, geospatial, as well as currently, quite recently, at the end of March, they have announced that they're going to do a partnership with China so that they can tackle space debris, otherwise known as asteroids, meteorites, and even the debris that comes from satellites that are unused and broken in space. So Egypt has a lot of different missions that they have already conducted and are currently working on. And then this 10-year ambitious space plan is going to allow more youth to participate in more competitions such as these, and actually have a saying as to where the space field will grow. And there are a couple of other CubeSats that are being currently held by different universities, and the National Authority for Remote Sensing and Space Sciences, and different authorities in Egypt that will allow this mission to come to be accomplished and have an actual astronaut in space. So there are two CubeSats, most prominently known as NARS Cube 2Y and NARS Cube 1, and they're all developed in-house at Egypt by Egyptian engineers, which I think is quite exciting because it can really give us a look at the skills that are already in Egypt and how we can actually be self-sustainable in terms of using such technologies here in Egypt. Further on the National Defense Scheme, Egypt's plan is to start as I said earlier, a space debris mitigation mission with a partnership of over $22 million grant to support the establishment of Egypt's assembly, integration, and testing facilities and ground station facilities for a possible launch site in Egypt where the rockets can actually go. So this can really tell you the great things that Egypt is going forward to and the great discoveries that they're making, especially in fields like astronomy and different partnerships that they're going to create for more opportunities for people like us, our age. So this will just give you a little brief about the EGSDC mission and why we found that Egypt is a great place for enriching such curiosity and giving you the opportunity to have a say. So what is the Egyptian Space Design Competition? Now, the competition is a space industry simulation where you will get to work as a contractor to design a conceptual design for a mission called BAS-AL. Now, BAS-AL is based on the name Dr. Farouk Elbaz. Has anyone heard of him? just let me know in the chat if you've heard of him before. سمعتوا عن دكتور فاروق الباز؟ Great. Can you tell me what he has done and his role in representing Egypt in such space missions? أو هو عمل إيه عشان هو عمل إيه حضرته عشان يخلي مصر يعني اسمها يرفع في الفضاء؟ Right, so he worked on some of the Apollo landing missions, the ones that Neil Armstrong was going to, the Apollo lander that he was going to work on, and he worked on studying the geology of the moon. So this is very synonymous to the work that you're going to be doing. So they're going to be doctors of your own in this, to discover different metals that we can use to self-sustain such missions on the moon. So he was a really great representative in Egypt, of Egypt in the space field, especially working with NASA, such people that you will get to work with through this competition. And you can represent your country even more, just as Dr. Farouk Gulbaz has as a role model for us Egyptians. So the Foundation Society will be the hypothetical contractor, and a contractor is the person who will ask you. Yes, exactly. He did ساهم إن هو يساعد في التخطيطات دي وكمان نعم هبوط الأبولو mission. Great, great. It's really great seeing more Egyptians know about his missions because he is a really good influence and role model for us all. And the contractor will be the foundations, will be you, and the client is the Foundation Society. So the Foundation Society has rolled out an RFP, a request for a proposal, which is a document that will ask what they need from us companies. So your team will be a company in charge of efficiently outlining and checking all their requirements from the request for proposal. وهي عبارة عن document فيها كل حاجة إن ال Foundation Society محتاجاها، وهي يعني كأنها بتسألنا كcompanies كteams إن إحنا نكتب الحاجات دي ونخليها في research proposal، وهتختار أحسن research proposal إن هو يعمل الميشن ده. But that's the hypothetical industrial simulation of it. And the purpose of this space settlement is to focus on manufacturing high-value goods, such as exotic metal alloys, electronics, and power production components. زي ما احنا هنا في الأرض بيكون عندنا بيوت ويعني different habitats وحتت الناس عايشة فيها، هنعمل نفس الحاجة في القمر. في القمر هيحتاج نفس الحاجات، هيحتاج إن احنا نستخدم power ونعمل rely على electronics وحاجات دي. وهنا في البيت احنا ما بنشوفش الحاجات دي، كلها بتتصنع في الفاكتوريز، كلها بتتصنع في الكول ستيشنز. احنا ما بنشوفش تحصل، واحنا لازم نكون عاملينها ولازم تكون sustainable وefficient، وكمان ما تعملش اي pollution زي ما احنا بنعمل هنا في الارض. كل الحاجات دي لازم نشتغل عليها واحنا في القمر اكتر من احنا بنشتغل عليها هنا، فيكون نفس الحاجه. لازم يكون تفكيرنا when we're thinking about space is to think about what we see here on Earth and kind of apply it onto space. And my personal favorite aspect of space is that it's multidisciplinary. يعني كذا field ممكن تشتغل فيها في الفضاء، يعني من الميديسن والديفنس، وكل الفيلدز دي لازم نستخدمها إن إحنا أصلاً نعيش هناك. But that's my favorite part about it, is that it's very multidisciplinary and very malleable for different people's interests. So we have to have that sort of mindset when we're building these types of research proposals, because we personally can't experiment, but we're creating hypothetical things. So you need to think about الاحتياجات للناس اللي هتعيش هناك، وكمان هم محتاجين إيه عشان يساعدهم إن هم يعيشوا هناك. especially in the environment والجو أكيد مش زي هنا في الأرض، فلازم نفكر مثلا الشمس والاتموسفير والبريشر هناك عامل إزاي، والحاجات المختلفة اللي بتساعدنا إحنا نعيش هنا وبتساعدنا نعيش هناك. You've probably heard this and saw it a lot on the website, but I need to reiterate and repeat the importance of these requirements. لازم يكون طلاب من عمرهم 15 ل 18 ولازم يكونوا هناك عايشين في مصر، يكون في public or private school. You have to have access to a stable internet connection, but if you do not have a proper laptop, you can always contact our team and we will make sure that we ensure that you have access to such connections and technology. You also have to have an interest in such technologies. As I said earlier, any interest في العلوم هيساعد كتير جدا عشان العلوم كلها أصلا تتدخل مع بعض وبعدين بنستخدمهم في الفضاء والحاجات دي. حتى الحاجات الصغيرة زي مثلا الثرمومتر اللي احنا كنا بنستخدمه عشان الكورونا لما ندخل المحلات وكده وبيعمل اساس التمبريتشر بتاعتنا. هو اصلا اتصنع من ناسا ومن ايديا تانية لما كانوا هم بيعملوا measuring the temperatures والراديشن اللي جاي من الاوبجكتس في الفضاء. فاحنا الفضاء هو مش حاجة احنا بنعملها كديستراكشن، بس حاجة بتساعدنا ان احنا نساهم في الفيلد ده وتساعدنا ان احنا نستخدم التكنولوجيز اللي بنعملها ديفلوب في الفضاء للارض. فلازم يكون عندك انترست ومايند سيت ان هو الفضاء تول لينا وكمان تول لينا ان احنا نعمل اكسبلوريشن وتساتسفاي such needs. Can I confirm whether my voice is audible? هو الصوت واطي عندكم؟ Okay, that's good. Ahmed, make sure to kind of higher the volume because it's okay for now. But again, if you have any troubles, this session will be recorded so you can ممكن تسمع part of the session. I'm going to answer that question. So in ecology, we studied the abiotic factors affect life. How can abiotic factors affect life on the moon? That is a really good question. So when it comes to astrobiology, fields البيولوجي هناك في القمر، الفاكتورز دي ممكن تعمل effects مفيش على فكرة مفيش لايف في المون نفسه، بس هم عملوا discover إن في amino acids ودول طبعا اللي هم الحاجات اللي بتصنع بيها ال DNA. هم عملوا discover إن في amino acids في القمر، بس الامينو acids دي جاية من حتة تانية، يعني مفيش أصلا لايف يعني مثلا ممكن تيجي من انتوا عارفين إن المون في asteroids كتير قوي بتيجي عندها. النوعية دول من الاسترويد اسمهم مايكروميتيورايتس، والمايكروميتيورايتس دول جايين من مثلا الرينج between Jupiter والother planets، جايين هناك وبيعملوا transport different minerals they have in the actual micrometeorite. فالمايكروميتيورايت دول بيكون عندهم amino acids، ولما مثلا بيعملوا chemical bonds أول ما يجوا في القمر بيطلعوا الامينو acids دول ويطلعوا chemicals تانية احنا ممكن نستخدمهم لما نروح نعيش هناك. بس ما فيش أي أوكي، أنا بس هكمل. قصدي علينا إحنا لما نروح زي الحرارة والجاذبية. أيوة طبعا والضغط طبعا. These are really important points we have to consider when we create our space settlement. So from that end, you'll have to make sure that your space we'll actually discuss this and the important aspects of that. Definitely the temperatures in the atmosphere are very different from Earth, and they will have an impact on astronauts. As you know, the International Space Settlement في اللاب الفضائي في الفضاء بيكون فعلا في تغيرات في جسم الأسترونوتس لما يروحوا هناك، فلازم نفكر في الحاجات دي. والحاجات دي في ال RFP في ال Request for Proposal اسمها Human Factors، والHuman Factors Department دي هتلاقيها في الورقة مكتوبة هتلاقيها في الورقة ثانية بس هتلاقيها في الورقة مكتوبة في ال Human Factors Section، وتحكي ازاي ان انت لازم تعمل adapt السبيس settlement ده في القمر. I'm just going to take 1 second because it seems as the recording has stopped, so I will try to configure the recording. Just 1 second. Okay, and we're back. So فعلا لازم نعمل account للحاجات دي، وهحكي ازاي تعمل research ان انت تشوف التغيرات دي. Also the deadline is on the 8th of May. وفي ناس كتير قوي عملوا register في الفورم، بس لازم تعمل register في الفورم بعد ما تعمل submit البيبر، وفي ايميل موجود في الويب سايت. لازم تعمله ايميل الاول الورقه اللي انت هتكتبها الريسيرش بروبوزل قبل ما تعمل ريجستر. بس عادي الناس اللي عملوا ريجستر هما بس المطلوب منهم دلوقتي ان هم يبعتوا الورقه دي للايميل. That was just a pointer that we saw from our team, but make sure to first submit your research proposal before sending in the form. Okay, so the second thing we will discuss is the research process. ده طبعا زي ما فعلا كنا بنقول، ده اللي احنا نستخدمه ان احنا نتعلم اي حاجات في ال request for proposal. ال request for proposal نفسه هو كله حاجات لازم نعملها تك، ولازم تكون في ال research paper كمينيمم. فهتشوفوا دلوقتي ان الحاجات فعلا زي ال abiotic factors هما mentioned في ال request for proposal. ودلوقتي هوريكم ازاي طريقة ان انتم ممكن تعملوا research بالاستخدام بال request for proposal. Again, I want to remind you that Dr. Furukawa is a really good role model, and he does encourage the basis of competitions because in itself encourages creativity and is the basis of knowledge. حتى لو ما فزتوش في الكومبيتيشن دي لازم تعملوا المايند سيت ان تستخدموا creativity وتفكروا ازاي نعمل represent Egypt في الفيلد ده ونخليها اسمها يكون موجود في field. فدايما have this mindset as we go along this competition. So the RFP. فأول صفحة في ال RFP هتلاقي إن في 3 C's، بحب أسميهم 3 C's. في حاجة اسمها case و contractor و client. الcase هو بيقول لك المون، بيقول لك المكان، وبيقول لك الستيت بتاع المون، وكمان بيقول لك الوقت اللي احنا فيه. فحاجة advantages صراحة وحاجة حلوة قوي إن هو بيقول لك إن it's far into the future. فالسبيس settlement دي far into the future, so you have the flexibility والوقت إن أنت ممكن تخلي السبيس settlement ده يكون في technologies لسه إحنا ما عملناهاش proving، زي مثلا nuclear fusion. إحنا لسه بنشتغل على الحاجات دي بس ما اتعملتش، وفي الفيوتشر هتتعمل. فأنت ممكن تستخدم all of these advantages وكتعمل حاجة جديدة حتى لو مش proven دلوقتي. فده الكيس. والكيس كمان إن هم عايزين مكتوب 50 years later lunar samples were collected and show that the moon has large concentrations of materials that are relatively rare on Earth. فده point برضه لازم تعرفه وانت بتعمل research، إن الماتيريالز اللي هناك على المون مختلفة عن الأرث، ممكن نستخدمها كحتى نعمل فلوس بيها لأنها rare، وكمان نستخدمها إن احنا تساعدنا هنا في الأرض كمان. The case basically will get you thinking. And a tip that I'm going to give you later on is that you have to annotate your ideas whilst you're reading this, because every single keyword does matter, and every single direct word such as declare or withdraw is also very important in this request for proposal. بعد كده هيقول لك keyword تانية، يعني in situ resource utilization. ده معناه برضو نفس الحاجة، معناه إن إحنا نستخدم الماتيريالز اللي في المون ونستخدمها اللي في المون ونستخدم منها حاجة حلوة، يعني حاجة نستخدمها في حاجة يعني useful كpower كده أو مية مثلا. That's also a keyword you have to do research on. The client is الناس اللي هي بتقولك تعمل الحاجات دي هي Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space COPOUS. ودي الكوميتي دي على فكرة بتشتغل مع United Nations. ففي hypothetical إن أنت ممكن تستخدم ال research proposal ك answer for that as a client. كمان ال contractor هو أنت هتشتغل كأنك ال Egyptian Space Agency بتعمل answer لل publication دي. في أي أسئلة لحد دلوقتي؟ On the first page. Okay. Okay, no worries. لو في أسئلة تانية انتوا شفتوها أو جالت لكم ممكن نعمل answer. الكلاينت هو اللي بيسألنا إن إحنا نعمل الحاجات دي كcompanies. يعني إحنا companies لازم نعمل answer للكيس ده. فالكلاينت هو يعني مثلا لما أنت تروح أيوة الكلاينت هو لما أنت مثلا تروح، عارفين الفريلانسرز، الكلاينت هو اللي بيجي لهم، هو اللي بيسألهم إن هم عايزين حاجة معينة. يعني مثلا عايزين اب معين، عايزين ويب سايت معين، هم دول الكلاينت. فهم بيسألونا عايزين specific type of settlement على المون، هو ده اللي هم عايزينه مننا. و we're going to get money from them إن إحنا نبني الحاجات دي. فهم لازم يختاروا أحسن idea من إحنا contractors، إحنا الناس اللي هنعملهم الحاجات دي، وهيختاروا أحسن idea ويدوا لها فلوس. And that's how it kind of works in the industry. I'm well aware that we only have 3 minutes left, so I will pause the session at around 1 minute when we have 1 minute left, and then I will restart it again. Ahmed, I hope that answers your question on what the client is. Let me know if it does not. The second page is for the RFP. It introduces the requirements and the minimum requirements and the departments. The minimum requirements دول هم يعني حاجات أقل حاجة ممكن تحطها في proposal. ولازم إن الidea بتاعتك ما تكونش based only on the minimum requirements عشان يكون في competitive edge بينك وبين التيمز التانية. فلازم تفكر إزاي ممكن تعمل أكتر من minimum requirements. والminimum requirements من دي إحنا هنستخدمها كنعمل judging ليك، بس لو لقينا حاجات أكتر again we will be higher in the chance of winning the competition. So you have to use them as checklists and not limitations. الديبارتمنتس دول لازم تاخدهم أكنهم departments في company حقيقية. فكل واحد من التيم بتاعك حتى لو في شخص واحد لازم تفكر إزاي هتعمل accomplish كل الديبارتمنتس دي، وتعمل divide the tasks between your team. ولو شخص واحد you have to think about how you'll achieve the minimum requirements efficiently and in the least amount of time possible. For different departments, you have the structural design, which deals with how the exterior looks like. So you will think about the drawing side and the drawing skills and the skills that some of your team may have. And for the operations, I'll just give a brief introduction on each. It's the power so for example, if people are here good at math and scaling, operations will be for you. Human factors, and we're looking at the abiotic factors. We're looking at the things that will affect the humans on the moon when they're transporting these materials. For example, we're looking at the radiation, the shielding, which I will dive into later on. Automation and control systems. احنا بنشوف electronics والكمبيوتر. وكمان انتوا عارفين ان لازم يكون في security في الحتة دي عشان احنا هيكون في 800 people بيروحوا وبيرجعوا between them و 5000 هيعيشوا هناك. Schedule and cost هو هيكون the time and the money required to actually build all of this. Okay, so now we were tackling the research process. We were talking about the second page of the RFP. So let me guide you through it. All right, if anybody has any questions regarding the second page, feel free to add them in. Just a couple of things that I would like you all to kind of realize about the RFP is that there are different keywords. So for example, such as describe, and describe would be that would kind of give you attention to kind of making your answer specific. The more your answer is specific, the more it becomes easier for the judges to give you pointers and give you a competitive edge. And the more specific your answer is, you'll notice that it takes less time to kind of resolve. Words like describe, must, all, specify. Specify usually refers to numbers, and include usually refers to a schedule or a diagram. So you need to look at those pointers. I've been asked numerous questions such as whether the diagrams are part of the two-page proposal. This has not been confirmed yet, but as of now, try to make your diagrams smaller so that they can fit in the 2-page proposal, and so that they can also, or you can actually make it as an appendix at the end of both of 2 pages. But I will confirm and post on the group and send everyone emails regarding whether they're included. But so far, consider them as part of the 2-page proposal. And things like numbers, dimensions, and types, all of these are keywords that you need to focus on mostly because they'll be the most time consuming, especially when you're trying to do research on numbers, and judges will really like to see how you came up with the number. So telling them how you came up with the number, such as you can use calculations, you can talk about how the other missions use the same amount. So things like power outputs, the efficiency, all those numbers will really give you a competitive edge against other companies. So these are just my little tips, but if you manage to add more, again, that'll give you a competitive edge. I personally thought that 2 pages are not enough. I feel like if there were more pages, it would give more people freedom. But considering that the deadline is on the 8th of May, and there are only 5 days left, 2 pages are just a way that you can draft your idea. And I think it's really feasible to do in 5 days. But the essence of the competition is not for you to overly complicate the proposal. It's not for you to make it very complex. Again, some of the numbers you may not be able to find. So you have to make sure that your idea is catchy. It's, attractive towards the client. We have to make sure that the idea is really feasible. But the main purpose is that you sell your idea. It's not to overcomplicate it or make it, take it as if it is a marketing procedure more than it is writing a very detailed research proposal, especially because I personally think 2 pages are not enough, but considering this time limit, I would say it is. That's a really good question though. Thank you for asking. All right, the last page of the RFP, this is my personal favorite because it'll talk about what you are going to be judged on. So thoroughness, credibility, balance, and innovation. So thoroughness is to make sure it's efficient. Credibility is that you used proper resources to kind of back your scientific hypothesis. The fact that there are no errors in your calculation, very easy actual components, especially for this competition, to be assessed on. And so you shouldn't really worry much about what you're going to be assessed on, but what you should worry about is achieving the minimum requirements because they are part of they're part of the thoroughness technique. And then the innovation, which again is selling your idea, and we will judge a larger portion of the selling your idea part than we will judge the other things. So make sure to kind of sell your idea. The important bits of that, you have to balance all sections of your proposal. You can't have one proposal talking about mostly human factors and then leaving all the other departments out. So it kind of has to be divided really equally. And the judges want to see that because they're going to see your thought process and how much money and how much time you're going to put into each department so that it could be catchy and more feasible. Again, هو الورقة اللي انتوا هتعملونها submit hypothetical يعني مش حقيقية. فاحنا كجudges كالclient لازم يشوف in it's really well thought out and you are thinking about every department. عادي ممكن تعملها بالرسام كورقة بس لازم يكون الدايمنشنز موجودة. أكيد أحسن أنت تعملها مثلا digitally على الأوتوكاد أو تينكركاد بس for now عادي to be على الرسام. But it's obviously better if you make it digitally. Again, if you guys have any questions, I really encourage you to ask them. I personally love answering them and seeing your different opinions. So here are my top tips, and this is actually what we did for the international edition. What we did for the international edition. So the first thing what we did was that we went through the document, the RFP for 10 minutes, and we read through it as a team. So what we did was we looked at what the teams, what are individual. We were actually 50 people in one team and about 10 people in every department in the international one. Now you only have 4 people, and some of you may even be one team or 2 people in a team or 3 people. So you need to look at how you're going to maximize utilizing every person in your team. And if you're one individual, you need to look at how you can maximize the time put in every single department. Because as I said, they're going to vary. Like for example, the diagrams, they may require more efforts as you're going to reference more papers. You have to really maximize that efficiency and try to annotate. As I went through the RFP, I gave you guys ideas, right? So لازم تكتب الايدياز بتاعتك وتعملها annotate عشان تعرف تلاقي resources easily وتعرف تلاقي حاجات ممكن تعمل back up your ideas. وده بيخلي البروسيس بتاع الانوفيشن وان انت تفكر اسهل بكتير. تاني حاجة you have to list all the main separate document, all these ideas on a separate document ورقة مختلفة عشان وكمان تعرف and whether you mark the minimum requirements and whether your idea fits the minimum requirements or not. وبعد كده you have to create a priority list. So based on efficiency لازم تعمل order عشان ال RFP على فكرة ال order بتاعه مش specific. يعني ال order ممكن ما يساعدكش في ال order بتاع departments وال ideas. ممكن ما يساعدكش في creating the idea. So after you looked at the RFP, you have to see which ones will take more time and order it based on the time taken. بعد كده you have to create many deadlines for doing the research that proves your ideas. زي ما قلت قبل كده إن لما تخلي ال answer specific to the minimum requirements هياخد less وقت هياخد less time. Okay, so this might look overwhelming. It's a lot on the diagram right now, but this is an example of what I mean when we're talking about annotating. فلما أنت تبص في ال request for proposal هتلاقي الكلمات دي. هتلاقي مثلا in order to ensure that all in situ ده أول صفحة كان بيتكلم عن ال in situ resource utilization. فلما نفكر في in situ resource utilization أول حاجة لازم نعملها إن هو صح they mentioned the moon in the case زي ما قلنا في أول صفحة. But we have to do a study on the moon. لازم نعمل understand المون. نستخدم ال abiotic factors as Yusuf said, and ولازم الرسومات كمان نعملها acknowledging زي ما أحمد said. So we have to acknowledge all of this. But before we do and we actually jump in to understanding and answering all those minimum requirements, لازم نفهم الأول المون والكيس اللي إحنا فيه عشان نعرف إحنا نعمل ideas that are efficient. فأول حاجة you will see here are just some of my ideas that will help you. فأول حاجة لازم نفكر ال essentials بتاعت اللايف. ال essentials بتاعت اللايف المية والأكل طبعا صح للأسترونوتس. فأول حاجة من المية ممكن نعمل منها نبات. فلازم نشوف المية دي في مية موجودة في القمر وعلى فكرة فلازم نعرف ال percentage composition. You also have to take account إن هو في ال far side of the moon. يعني المون ال dark area بتاعته من ورا. فلازم تعرف كم percentage مية في ال dark area. ولازم تعرف إزاي تستخدم المية دي وتعملها extract. So drilling والحاجات دي. In order to have inspiration, you can look at past missions and past rovers that have been to the moon. Or current missions that are going to go, especially the Artemis mission by NASA. It will help you loads to understand how you can collect the water and concentrate it and purify it for drinking. أكيد المية هتبقى ليها مستخدمات مختلفة فلازم تعرف إزاي تخليها للمستخدمات زي للشرب أو ال waste water management purification أو للنبات فلازم تعرف how to purify the water for each thing. And it could also be a potential power source زي مثلا للfuel cells لل MMRTG. ده كلام بقوله ممكن تعملوا research عليه. فال MMRTG ده بيستخدم I can't quite recall بس بيستخدم ال process of nuclear fission فبيحتاج مية عشان يعمل thermal management لل temperature بتاع الحاجات دي. فالمية ممكن نستخدمها لكده كمان. فتعمل brainstorm على ال ideas وكمان تستخدم research انت تفهم المية اللي في المون عاملة ازاي. وكمان ال compositions في lunar soil. ال lunar soil هو التراب اللي في المون و more professionally اسمه lunar regolith REGOLITH. فالlunar regolith ده ممكن تعمله analysis. في حاجة اسمها petrographic analysis وده بيفهم based on the like the satellites that orbit the moon زي مثلا الشاندريان ودي satellite من إنديا from the the Indian Space Research Organization اسمها ISRO. وهم عاملين حاجة عملوا فيها petrographic analysis بيشوفوا الراديشن اللي بيجي على اللونر regolith، وكمان بيشوف based on that بيشوفوا اللونر regolith مصنوع من أي materials whether you can extract metals كمان في lunar soil. وزي ما قلنا قبل كده كمان المون بتعمل receive radiation و micrometeorite impacts، فلازم تعمل shielding من الأسترونوت وتختار مكان في far side of the moon ما بيجولوش الحاجات asteroids دي اللي بتعمل hitting في المون. كمان الراديشن ده ممكن يعمل حاجات في الأسترونوت نفسهم، ممكن يعمل damaging للهلمتس، فلازم برضه تفكر ازاي هتساعدهم انهم يعملوا shielding من الحاجات دي. دي حاجة اسمها shielding و insulation. ف protection و insulation لازم تفكر في الماتيريال اللي هتستخدمها في exterior. ده كمان بيجي من ال structures department. ف you have to think about the exterior of the whole settlement. You have to see the moon's albedo. The moon's albedo is basically its reflective index، يعني كم من الشمس الريز بتاعتها بتعمل reflecting وكم بتعمل absorption. فلازم تشوف الحاجات دي عشان تعرف مثلا ممكن تستخدمها كpower source ك space-based solar power which uses satellites to reflect the light, or you can use solar rays themselves potential power source. and you also need to find thermal insulation، يعني ما فيش ultraviolet rays، ما فيش atmosphere في القمر إنه هو يساعدنا نعمل protection من الشمس. وكمان it's quite dangerous for the food and the human factors and the plants, the radiation that comes to the moon. So you have to think about all these things. You can reference other missions, as I said again, as a base for your ideas. I would recommend that 100%, and I use that personally. Everyone uses that, so we reference other missions that have been to the moon, especially the Apollo landers. They've done a lot of technologies such as حاجة زي blanket بيحطوها فوق ال lunar lander وبتعمل reflect للشمس اسمها cylindrical strut، واستخدموها في الأبولو لاندر. فأنتوا ممكن تشوفوا الحاجات المختلفة دي. and then structural design. ففي ال structural design بيقول لك لازم يبقى فيه 5000 occupants و 800 transient individuals. 800 transient individuals يعني ناس هيروحوا ويطلعوا من القمر، مش هيكونوا permanent، هيكونوا temporary. فبيقول لك لازم يكون safe and habitable وفي any one time. any one time ده معناه لازم تفكر في السيزون، يعني القمر ده بيوصل دلوقتي يعني هو بقى بعيد عن الشمس ولا قريب من الشمس، فلازم تفكر في ال variances بتاع radiation وال solar absorption. ف you also have to think about the structure وال harvesting plants، ازاي هتعمل collect ال solar rays وازاي هتستخدم اللايت. مثلا ممكن تستخدم UV light فيهم في البلانتس عشان تعملهم growing. وكمان بتفكر دلوقتي في الروف هيحتاج plating ازاي. زي مثلا do you want to make it a window that's clear for the sun to pass, or do you want it to be insulated? So you have to think about the weather and different variances of them. How can we protect the colony from meteors? That's a really great question. So I would say to approach this, you have to think about which places on the moon receive the most micrometeorite impacts. And another thing you have to think about is security. So for security, we've done this in the ISSDC where we had different things called CAS cars, which were basically trucks for transportation of cargo. You can have something for transportation of humans to a possible safety location. So using the satellites that are on the moon, orbiting the moon, you can detect the micrometeorite impact before it actually impacts the moon, and you can create a security system that protects them from doing so. زي مثلا ممكن تخليهم transport the people living there في مكان تاني بعيد عن ال main settlement، or عشان ال micrometeorite impact بتبقى usually صغيرة قوي. على فكرة الستيشن الفضائية بيجي لها micrometeorite impacts بس بيبقوا صغيرين، فبيخلوا الماتيريال strong عشان تعمل deflect. فأنت ممكن تخلي الماتيريال stronger عشان تعمل deflect دول. ولو كبيرة you have to transport the people, so you have to think about another safety base. I hope that answers your question. That's a really good question. overall though. It does get you thinking. And then, all right, great. And then for safety and habitability, you have to think about the thermal insulation, the radiation shielding, and dust. الدست هو ممكن من التراب يعمل مشاكل في electricity والpower sources، فلازم تشوف ازاي كمان تعمل plating للماتيريال ان هو يعمل deflect للدست وما يعملش effect في overall exterior of the settlement. And so on. So you will go through the RFP, you will start thinking about different ideas. بنفس الحاجة في operations engineering والhuman factors. تقعد تكتب كده different ideas للcompetition. It's a really nice process and it's actually quite easy as you practice it more for every department. And then there are varied resources for research and inspiration. أنا أكتر حاجة استخدمناها كان ResearchGate وجوجل سكولر. لو كتبت على جوجل مثلا أي سؤال أو أي research question بيجي لك أول حاجة ال research papers usually from ResearchGate or Google Scholar. بس لو أنت عايز عشان أصلا ما فيش وقت كتير للديدلاين ممكن أو تاخد نبذة مثلا من كل idea ومش عايز تبذل وقت كتير or efforts إن أنت تفهم ال concepts الموجودة عشان they're usually complex. تتفرج على فيديوهات على اليوتيوب، في فيديوهات كتيرة قوي بتتكلم عن ideas especially NASA لما بتعمل explain هما in previous missions you get so many ideas while watching the video. You can even look at the AstroPoint page on Instagram at astropoint.space where احنا هنعمل posting حاجات أكتر ممكن تساعدك وانت بتعمل ال ideas. وكمان تتفرج في ويب سايت اسمه Space News وبيتكلم عن حاجات كتير عن المون والdifferent developments اللي هيعملوها. وكمان في حاجة جديدة اسمها actually في حاجة جديدة اسمها like a really new exploration called where they want to create a map of the moon, and that's a mission that NASA has, and that it was actually posted on Space News. So if you follow Space News and their lunar explorations and announcements, you will get a lot of ideas. So again, research previous lunar missions on the far side of the moon. عملوا explore the space settlements. في كتير قوي رسومات وanalysis عن حاجات hypothetical، حاجات مش حقيقية عايزين يعملوها في القمر. هل عادي عادي الانجليش بتاعك مش لازم يكون قوي جدا، ممكن تستخدم very simple terms بس لازم ال request for proposal يكون بالانجليش. If you guys need any help with translation or any such or understanding, you can always email me. My email will be sent at the end, and I can help you with that. But your English does not have to be strong at all. But your submission بتاعك لازم يكون بالإنجليش عشان judges معظمهم مش من مصر. ف again you don't have to have مش لازم يكون عندك English كويس. حتى وأنا في ال ISSDC في الفاينل كومبيتيشن كان في ناس ما بيعرفوش يكلموا انجلش كويس وكنا عادي بنفهمهم عادي عشان بنساعدهم في الفاينل راوند. ما كانش في ناس بيتكلموا كويس انجلش بس كنا بنساعدهم وبنفهمهم الحاجات، فده مش مشكلة كبيرة. وبعدين you have to look at the space power sources because these are the main things that are going to power the whole settlement. Right, so the pre-last thing is the introduction and resources on the topic. دي example من research proposal اشتغلت عنه قبل كده، وعملنا أول حاجة study على radiation. keywords هنا cosmic rays، strength بتاع radiation. حتى لو words دي مختلفة أو مش عارفين تفهموها ممكن حتى ما تستخدموهاش، يعني هو بس ده description للradiation اللي بيجي. بس الأرقام دي ممكن برضه تساعدكم لما تعملوا design الماتيريال again وتعملوا design material بيقاوم الراديشن ده. فده بس example you can have a read through it. بيتكلم عن X-rays والgamma rays اللي بتيجي والcomparison ليه للأرض. فممكن also another tip I have is to compare the radiation that comes to the moon from the Earth because it kind of gives you فكرة عن الاختلافات دي. Here you have an idea of how you can shield from astronauts from radiation, the insulation and protection, and this is very related to the human factors department in the RFP. طيب ليه اخترنا self-sustainable space settlement؟ هوريك دلوقتي فيديو على اليوتيوب من ناسا. ممكن يجيب لكم فكرة كبيرة الأهمية للسبيس settlement.
The history of this agency is marked with broken barriers, once viewed as impossible, with science fiction turned reality, with innovations that have spun industries all their own, and with demonstrations of peace for all humankind.
We soar in the skies of our home planet. We maintain a human presence just outside of gravity, and we touch points all across the solar system and beyond. We're going back to the moon, and this is why.
The moon is a treasure trove of science.
It holds opportunities for us to make discoveries about our home planet, about our sun,
And about our solar system.
The wealth of knowledge to be gleaned from the moon will inspire a new generation of thought and action.
Without fail, every major program and mission NASA has invested in has led to technologies and capabilities that have shaped our culture.
The breakthroughs of the Artemis era will define our generation and the generations to follow.
The tens of thousands of jobs associated with propelling us to the moon today are just the beginning of a lunar economy that will see hundreds of thousands of new jobs develop around the world.
This is not an ambition of one entity or one country. The exploration of the moon is a shared effort,
woven together by a desire for the greater good.
Why the moon? Because the missions of tomorrow will be sparked by the accomplishments of the Artemis generation today.
because the ambition to go has already begun.
And because Mars is calling. We need to learn what it takes to establish a community on another cosmic shore. So let's camp close before pushing out.
And so, we go to the moon now, not as a series of isolated missions, but to build a community on and around the moon capable of proving how to live on other worlds.
We'll use the lessons from more than 50 years of peaceful exploration to send a new generation to the lunar surface to stay.
We will anchor our efforts on the lunar South Pole to establish the Artemis Base Camp,
positioning us for long-term science and exploration of the lunar surface.
We will prove what it takes to assemble a complex ship in deep space.
We will perfect descending down to and returning from a distant surface.
We will learn how humans can survive and thrive in a partial gravity environment.
With improved spacesuit designs, mobile habitats, and with reconnaissance robots pre-positioning and relocating supplies.
We will learn how to utilize the resources we find on these other worlds, starting with finding water ice and purifying it to drinkable water.
And refining that into hydrogen for fuel and oxygen to breathe.
We will establish fission power plants on the surface of the moon, capable of supporting a growing community of efforts.
And we will expand the logistics supply chain
to enable commercial and international partners
to resupply and refuel deep space outposts.
None of this is simple or easy, but nothing in our history ever has been.
The Eagle has landed. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
This kind of continuous lunar presence is a natural extension of all that we've learned in low Earth orbit. And what we will accomplish there will ensure the monumental missions to Mars are within reach. As we ready the launch of the first Artemis mission, and as commercial companies ready their lunar landers for the first private payload deliveries, we have already begun to take the next step.
So what do you guys think of the video? That's definitely a lot to take in. They discussed the water requirements. They discussed the different explorations and the future missions and how we can use the moon as a platform to discover other planets such as Mars. So it was definitely very useful and comprehensive. So using videos from NASA will be very useful, as much as they're very general, but they're really good if you need to brainstorm and kind of refer to different missions they already have and other ideas. So here's a sample structure of an essay I used previously. First of all, you will talk about introduction. So that is the response to the first page, that you are acknowledging the in situ resource utilization. You are acknowledging the different factors. The mission statement, so why the mission دي مهمة. The concept of operations, different departments اشتغل عنها. وبعد كده space settlement design. وده diagrams اللي هي كانت موجودة في RFP 2.1. والرسومات تحطها في الأول مثلا. But they're very sample, so you can do what you want actually in terms of the structure of the essay. بس ده الستراكشر اللي أنا استخدمتها قبل كده. Yes, Yusuf, the sources can be videos. بس من الفيديوز دول انتوا هتستخدموا information وتعملوا ideas of your own. وبعد كده 5 و 6 و 7 هيكونوا عن department functions. والثامن حاجة دي very optional, بس again it has a competitive edge. انت بتتكلم عن الفيوتشر بتاعت باز اول والريسيرش اللي انتوا هتعملوه في الفيوتشر. دي حاجة كبيرة قوي ان المون كبلاتفورم لمارس. الارتمس ميشن هيحطوا فيها $7.5 billion. ف it's a really big opportunity to different nations in whom are a part of this. So you have to think about whether you will bring Egypt to the moon and your participation in space as a whole in the future. Okay, that is it for the session. I will no, unfortunately عشان دي أول مرة يكون الكومبيتيشن بتاعت ال SDC في مصر ما فيش example لحد دلوقتي للبروبوزل. البروبوزلز اللي قبل كده أنا كنت بتكلم عنها كان proposals أنا عندي في كومبيتيشنات تانية. ف للأسف ما فيش، بس this is a sample structure you can use. وهشير كل لا للأسف ما فيش template، بس أنا هشير الريسورسز دول يعني idea للessay. وكمان I will try to find a resource for you of a sample essay for another competition that I used. So هدور على حاجة وهبعت لكم. بس all the resources and everything I will share it with you that was in this PowerPoint. Okay. دلوقتي time for a Q&A. Again, if you guys have any other questions that you get throughout the day, you can always email me at this email on the screen. I will even type it. But for now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will answer them. Or do you guys have any questions? Okay, until you guys have asked the questions, I will just give you a glimpse of my experience. So from my experience through this competition, it has really allowed me to find an industry simulation. I'm practice كأني أنا بشتغل فعلا وبعمل achieve goals بتاعت bigger space organizations زي ال COPOUS committee, which works with the UN. And this simulation ممكن يساعدك إن أنت في طريقة تفكيرك عن الفيوتشر وعن الفيوتشر بتاع الفضاء. it was a really great experience because أنا كمان في الآخر راوند كنت ممكن أتكلم مع ناس كتيرة قوي وبتكلم مع professionals، ناس بيشتغلوا في actual space organizations زي Lockheed Martin و Virgin Galactic. I got to interact with them. والتيمز بتاعي كمان كانوا من أنحاء العالم، فمن فلسطين، أمريكا، البرازيل، كانوا في ناس كتيرة قوي، فأنا ممكن أتعلم عن هم الأيدياز بتاعتهم وكمان النيشنز بتاعتهم بيشتغلوا في الفضاء. It's a really good opportunity إن أنت تعمل represent مصر في ال ISSDC، وكمان الميشنز بتاعتها يبقى well known